Governor Paterson, I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon here at the National Governors Convention. Can you just talk a little bit about why you decided to come out to the convention this year?
Well, I've come to the convention all 3 years that I've been governor, and right now, 48 of the 50 states are in deficit. Governors are trying as hard as they can to be the adult in the room and to keep the state's fiscal policies in a way that would create balance. All of us have overspent in the country. Most states, all 50 of them in a lot of ways, are in debt, far higher than we should have. And so the collaboration and the opportunity to share information and to hear what's going on in other states, I found to be invaluable in terms of implementing policy in New York. It was after the governor's conference that was in Philadelphia in 2008 that I decided to go on television and give a statewide address warning that we would experience the greatest recession since the Great Depression, and we have. Much of the information I obtained from the governor's conference.
Now, you talk about the recession that we're in. The budget process is all but stalled. You've said multiple times now you're not negotiating anymore. For you, this is a closed book.
I told the legislature that I was issuing an emergency appropriation on June 28th. It was the last one that I would issue. It would balance the budget. It would have a view toward how to replace $1 billion of money for Medicaid that we're not going to receive. And the legislature went ahead and passed the budget in lieu of passing the emergency appropriation, which is what they could have done 3 months before. And since that time, they have not been able to agree on what the revenue package will be. And I'm not really going to have that conversation with them. They should present a revenue package, one that both sides agree, and I will look at it. And if it's balanced, I'll approve it. And if it's not, I'm going to veto it. And I think they are aware that I will veto things these days.
I think you've made that point fairly clear. As the outgoing governor, though, you only have a couple more months left in office. Has this process been disappointing to you? Do you feel let down by the legislature?
Well, I feel that people are not coming to grips with the real economic condition of the state, and I am very sensitive to the fact that this is an election year and there's a great deal of anxiety about the results of those elections. And even among the governors, 24 governors are not running for re-election. That's a staggering number at this time in history. However, we all swore to an oath, and the oath was to put the business of the people above our own particular careers or our own political interests. And I don't think that that's been done. I think it's clear. I think it's the shame is bipartisan, and it's the reason why I have decided not to allow this state to be in a deficit in October and November, because last year the legislature, in my opinion, embarrassed this state by not closing the deficit, forcing the state to run out of money for the first time in its history, and then causing me to delay payments to schools and local governments and not-for-profits until the revenues came back. And I'm not going to allow that process to happen again on my watch.
Well, on your watch, you're outgoing here. What do you think you're going to be remembered by in these last few months in office?
Well, I'm not really thinking about how I'm going to be remembered as much as what's the right thing to do for all New Yorkers. We need to accelerate our recovery, and the way to do that is to tighten our belts. The reason people are resisting and are so recalcitrant to the concept that we have got to do more with less is because we have been doing more with more and overspent time and time again, even in the 90s, when the Dow Jones average quadrupled between June of 1990 and June of 1998, and there was great abundance of wealth. This state was in deficit 5 of the 8 years because we always lived above our means. Now we're living on the margin of our means, and I think I owe it to the next governor, whoever it may be, that I not exacerbate the problem and instead bring us closer to a budget next year that can be balanced on time.
Now, you're talking about the past. There are a number of issues within your run in office that still haven't been resolved. namely the Commission of Public Integrity, their investigation into you. Are you looking forward to closure of that? Have you testified? Do you want to put that behind you?
I think I've been asked to refer all those questions to my legal team. Right now, my job is to manage the state.
How do you think the management of the state is going right now?
Well, I think that in spite of not always the best cooperation, that we have not seen our credit rating reduced in the last 3 to 4 years. We are presenting a balanced budget. We are accelerating the process where we can move into recovery by, unfortunately, cutting a lot of very valuable programs. They're not really pork. Many of them work on shoestring budgets. They're labor intensive. But right now, we can't afford them. And it's a very difficult message to convey. But I think that the essence of management is leadership, and that's the message we're trying to convey.
You talk about some of these programs being hard to cut. What's been the hardest thing in your mind that you've had to do?
Well, there's so many diseases that children have, childhood leukemia, childhood obesity. We now have areas where we address childhood heart attack and childhood stroke. A lot of this is related to lifestyles. And so, obviously, my wife Michelle and I have dedicated ourselves to Healthy Steps programs to try to give children the type of nutrition that will avoid this. So having to veto some of the discretionary money that was going to treat these programs was very difficult for me. It's heart-wrenching. But you have to be consistent when you implement a rule. There are a few exceptions we might make, but only when it's critical to life itself in a financial crisis.
And you talk about the exceptions that you might make. There have been a number of vetoes concerning education funding, but you have been more willing to talk about charter schools.
Well, I vetoed the whole bill, and it eliminated the cap on how much charter schools could receive, and it was part of the entire bill. With the charter schools this year, we did cut them exactly the amount that we cut the public schools, in spite of rather rigorous objection from the charter schools. But what we had to explain to them is that the 75% of the money the public schools get is transportation and capital money, not operational money, and therefore they would have to sustain the same cut that the public schools did. In the overall education bill, they had slipped a cap in on how much the districts could give the charter school. The veto has removed it, and I don't know that it was such a great idea in the first place.
Now, I know you're very busy here at the Governor's Convention. You have a lot of things to do. We have to let you go, but I'd be remiss if I didn't first ask you about LeBron James' decision to head over to the Miami Heat. What's your reaction?
Well, I think LeBron James made a mistake. And the mistake he made is he certainly put winning over money, because he lost $30 million doing that. But also, it's not just the winning, it's your legacy. And I think that Michael Jordan, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, the people with whom he's in the same class, they took teams and brought them to a championship rather than organized probably 3 of the best players in the league to win a championship. So if he wins a championship, everyone's going to say, well, of course, they had a dream team. If they lose, it's going to be an embarrassing moment. So LeBron, good luck, but I would have done it differently.
And now you mentioned LeBron's legacy. No parting words on your own?
Well, maybe when I've left, but right now I'm really too busy to think about my legacy.
Thank you so much, Governor Paterson, for joining us here at the National Governors Convention.
Thank you.